You use the phrase threat landscape, and you said you have feared for your safety, and those two things are obviously linked. So, can you connect those dots and sort of explain how disinformation, misinformation like this becomes a real world threat? Welcome to RVA Magazine. I am Landon Shroder, one of your publishers here in Richmond, Virginia. I recently learned that to fly a Black Hawk helicopter in the Virginia National Guard, it takes around 2 years of training. That's nonstop training. And that training roughly cost around $1.5 million, which means every pilot is a huge investment. And that investment is ultimately about all of us in our own safety and our own security. They're the front line. If there is a climate crisis, if there's a natural disaster, they lead search and rescue. They lead medical evacuations. They lead aerial reconnaissance. They're Virginia's heroes. They're our heroes. Unless you're a trans pilot like Jo Ellis, accused of being the pilot who caused the tragic crash at Reagan National Airport in D.C. in January. You'll remember a Black Hawk helicopter collided with an American Airways passenger jet, killing all 67 people on board, including the Black Hawk's flight crew. And Jo was blamed for that. She was accused of being the person piloting that Black Hawk. Anyways, with Pride around the corner, we wanted to hear from Jo, and we wanted to hear her story. It's fucked up and pretty indicative of where we're at in America right now. So thanks for listening. I think where I really want to start is if you could just talk to us a bit about your journey into military service.
Yeah. So I come from a family of service, and I like to say that service is in my blood. You know, my grandfather was in the Navy during World War II and was in the Atlantic hunting submarines, and my great uncle was airborne, and I think D-Day +3, and was also in Bastogne during the Battle of the Bulge, and had some very, riveting tales from that time. And then my cousin is retired Admiral Jim Ellis, who used to be head of Strategic Command. I joined the Virginia Army National Guard because I thought that was a great way to kind of do both at the same time, like have a life, but also have service, which was such an important part of my life. I just didn't think the active duty all the time lifestyle was for me. So I joined the Guard, and it felt like it was a great way to serve the Commonwealth of Virginia and then also my country. And so I was 19 years old when I joined.
Can you talk a bit about your time in Iraq during the Iraq War?
Yeah. So my job, my MOS was a 15 Golf, which is a aircraft structural mechanic. And being a small aviation unit, we also, wore many hats. So one of the many hats that I wore was also the maintenance database administrator for the maintenance system for all the helicopters. But then also what I was really proud of was door gunnery. So I got to be a crew member on the Black Hawk and fly missions. Pretty much every other day I was flying the ring route missions around Iraq as a door gunner. So I would sit behind the pilot and look out the window with a machine gun and stare at the desert for hours a day, hoping nothing shoots at me. So in the National Guard, you're promotion limited by your MOS because you can't just go anywhere. So your state has to have that slot to be promoted into. And so I had switched over to a 15 Tango in 2018, which is a Black Hawk mechanic specifically, kind of like a pull parts, replace, diagnose, troubleshoot, general things about the airframe. And it still wasn't exactly what I wanted. I still really wanted to become a pilot. And so I used that. I ended up getting promoted to staff sergeant by doing that. So I was at E6 at the time. And then around 12 years was coming up, and I was about to do maybe a third enlistment. I had done 2 6-year enlistments. So I was coming up on my third, and I was like, you know what? I really don't want to do another enlistment. I really don't want to serve any longer unless I can become a pilot. And so for years I've been kind of chasing that, and I had applied and been turned down a couple of times. It's very competitive. And so it was kind of like my last ditch effort. It's like, well, I'll just get out at 12 years and be done. And I applied and they accepted me. So then I was like, all right, well, I'm going to flight school. And here I was right at almost the age cutoff. So I was 30 when I was accepted. And I think you have to be accepted by 31. So I was right there. And I went to Fort Rucker, Alabama for 18 months and trained to become a UH-60 pilot.
Can you just sort of frame for people that might not understand how involved that process is, what it's like going to flight school and being able to fly such a powerful machine like a Black Hawk helicopter?
Yeah, I mean, it is an intense process. It's not impossible. Obviously, people graduate all the time, but it is intense. It is like committing yourself to 18 months to focusing mostly on that. If you're also trying to like have kids and do a whole bunch of other things at the same time, you're just not going to succeed. The schedule is way too grueling. But yeah, so the kind of the whole pipeline is you become, you go to a board and they give you like a panel interview, you get accepted into the program. And then from there you have to become an officer. So you either become a commissioned officer or a warrant officer. And I wanted to just strictly fly and be an expert at that. And so I chose the warrant officer route. That's 6 weeks. So part of that 18 months includes that time. So you spend 6 weeks becoming an officer, which is almost like going to basic training again on top of college level courses. You know, here I am in my 30s, basically doing basic training again. I'm just like, what am I doing? Like getting yelled at for my bunk and not being perfect. Like, come on. But I made it through. And it was worth it. After that, you move on to SEER school, which is the Army's high risk of capture program. And that's an intense 3 weeks. I would say that was probably one of the most, not difficult in the sense that you won't graduate, because as long as you don't give up or get injured, you'll more than likely graduate. It's just a, are we allowed to cuss on here?
Sure.
It's just a mind fuck. Oh. It's survival, evasion, resistance, and escape. Okay. So it's almost like the phases of it, right? So like the first phase is survive, and then all of the evade, and if you do get captured, how do you resist? And then if you are captured, how do you escape? Whether you get rescued or not, but how do you leave with dignity and also alive? The best thing about them putting SEER school up front before you start touching an aircraft is that it does give you the motivation to get through it. So the whole time I'm in this process, I'm like, I just got to get through this very uncomfortable situation. And I'll be flying those beautiful machines. So that was one thing that was keeping me going. But yeah, so you start out with like, very basic survival stuff like, hey, like here's how you make a shelter. Here's how you start a fire. You kind of go through that. Here's how you kill and clean an animal. Here's how you trap an animal maybe. Kind of all those, just what you would think of when you think survival school. And then there's a whole other phase that is the capture and resistance portion. I just call it simply the POW portion. And that's the portion that is what everyone hears the stories of SEER school, like basically you get dropped in the woods and you get captured. At some point you will get captured. You're very tired, very hungry. You only have like water on you basically. So it's like, you just scrounge around and eat berries or whatever you can find in the woods, maybe an animal or a snake or something. And then, so it's like a culminating event that's 5 days. And that's the hardest part, which is where I had the epiphany. And then once you're captured, they do the whole in-processing thing and treat you like a POW and put you in a box. And so that was the part where, and these are all stories, it is a classified school, but these are all stories that people had told me even up until this point. So I'm pretty comfortable that this is not like, classified pieces of the school. But yeah, you end up in a box and you're there for, it's like sensory deprivation. You're in there for hours. And I remember them blasting Yoko Ono at one point over the speaker. And I'm like, well, that is torture. They've gone from enhanced interrogation straight to torture with Yoko Ono singing in my ear.
But then what happens if you're an avant-garde music fan? It might be great for you.
You're just jamming out.
Yeah.
But no, and so you're in there for a period of time. My guess is 8 to 12 hours. You're just so exhausted that certain things come flooding in and start to click. And I think it must have been obviously not having the ability to justify, because you're so tired. Like it just came flooding, kind of like how people describe the life flashing before their eyes. Like it was almost like someone had like a projector with a whole bunch of slides, and they just hit play, and it was like flipping through all these memories in my head of, oh, this time and that time and that time, all these things. Basically, if I were to narrate it, it was, what this all means, right? Like it's this thing that you probably suspected but ran from, and there was just a bunch of random events that occurred in my head that was just like, oh yeah, that time when this happened, or that feeling about this, or why I acted like that this one, like all these things are just like, oh, like, this probably means you're trans, right? And like my response to that while I'm standing there exhausted was like, oh fuck, like I guess I'll have to deal with this when I get out of school. Like
You had your epiphany, you finished flight school, you talked to your wife. Then if we're to sort of take your timeline forward, at what point, did you, I guess, alert your command, or at what point did you officially determine that you wanted to transition?
So I came back in June of 2022 from flight school, and I did the classic, like, well, let me just dress up at home and like see, like I was still under the impression that, well, now that I know what this thing is, I can fix it. I don't need to actually transition. I don't need to do any of that stuff. I need to just figure it out, do a couple of things to experiment and see what this really is. And I had gotten to the point where I didn't want to give up my military career or my wife. And that was what I was most worried about losing, was both. And so I had resigned myself to like, well, now that I know what it is, I can cope better with it. Like I was a man for 31 years. I can be a man for 31 more years, right? Like I can do this. And unfortunately, once you crack open a door and get a little bit of light shown through when you're in the darkness, it's a lot harder not to chase that light. Another way to describe it is someone is offering something that makes you feel better and makes you feel healthier, and you're having to say no to that is really difficult once you realize it does help and it does make you feel better. And so then I started actually struggling more with it at that point, but I was still resigned to not doing it. So then I did. So once you finish flight school, you go to your unit and you're still not quite fully mission capable. You have to go through localized training with your unit, sign off by instructors that, okay, yeah, you can still do the basic things and we can still trust you to fly this aircraft. So I did that. That's called readiness level progression. It takes about 6 months. And so I completed that. I had a lot of really good reviews from instructors saying like, I was a great pilot to fly with. I'm not bragging. I'm not saying like I was the best, but I wasn't like shit either. So it was like,
but you were the best.
I was doing well. Yeah. Yeah. Probably I did that for about a year after flight school, of just pursuing things, hunkering down, thinking I can just white knuckle through gender dysphoria for the rest of my life now that I know what it is. And my wife pulled me to the side one night after many conversations and struggles and stuff, and just said, hey, I can see this affecting you, and you need to do what you need to do for your own health and not worry about me, not worry about anyone else. And once I had that, I already had the military policy saying that I could transition and I could keep flying. So once I had the wife's kind of like endorsement, she's like, I won't be there for you in the same way, but I will not leave you. Like, I won't abandon you, basically. And so now we're like platonic partners, like we're very close, but we date separately. And so that allowed me to give me that kind of runway of, okay, I can actually take some baby steps and see how far I want to take this thing. And I'll hop off the train if it's ever too much. And it never got to be too much. And so fall of 23, so September of 2023, I notified my commander that I wanted to use the in-service transition policy, and came out to him, and he called me right away because I sent an email, and he called me right away and said, I don't know much about this, but however I can support you, whatever we can do, like we want to keep you flying. You're a great asset to have, like all the love, basically. I really love that about the Virginia Guard. Yeah, like I haven't run into anyone that had like support from the adjutant general all the way down, which makes it so hard about the ban. Like the fact that I'm being kicked out is like, I don't know anyone in my chain of command all the way up to the adjutant general that wants to lose $1 million asset for Virginia. Like that's Virginia taxpayer money. That's not like that came out of DOD. Like those are Virginia funds that trained me, and I support the state for floods and natural disasters. Like
Crisis response.
Yeah, like I work among the people, citizen soldier, right? And I don't think anyone wants that to happen. I don't think anyone at that level understands how effective trans service members were. I think they heard stories. There's no stack of complaints that they were able to submit to the judge. So it's like, I don't know where they got the stories. It's very effective in elections. I don't think it's about cruelty. I think it's about power and winning. And I think it's one of the big items that allowed them to win was women in sports and children and trans military. I think if I had 10 minutes with President Trump, I would win him over. Like, I think he'd be like, yeah, it doesn't make sense to waste $1 million when you can go fly the helicopter just fine. Right? Like,
yeah, I mean, okay, let's shift gears and talk about how you were targeted, victimized by a right-wing media ecosystem. And if I could just level set it.
please.
So essentially a right-wing influencer named Matt Wallace, because we can swear on this podcast, I'm going to call him a douchebag, falsely identified you as the pilot in the January 29th crash at Reagan National, a crash between a UH-60 Blackhawk and an American Airlines passenger plane that resulted in, I believe, 67 people being killed. And then to follow on from that, he also implied that it was a potential trans terrorist attack, and he put your photo up as he sort of framed these things. Is that the sort of broad level set?
It is. I'll say that I did not call him any names. You did.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. Okay. Can I call him that again?
I wrote an essay for smartconish.com. And in that essay, and this was because the executive order came out for the military ban. And I used to work for Michael Smerconish as his like IT person. And so he's like, hey, I know you transition. I know you serve. Like, I would love to humanize this issue. I don't think many people know the type of person affected by this. Once again, going back to what we said about most people don't know kind of that everyday trans person that isn't a fringe leftist online, you know, screaming about whatever. And I thought long and hard about it. I said, you know, this is risky because doing anything in this kind of charged environment, like they'll target me for being trans, they'll target everything about me. Like it'll be, of course I didn't think it would go viral, but I was just kind of like, this is so risky. Plus I'm still serving and maybe there will be a grandfather clause. And so I have to be very careful about what I say, how I say it, and mentioning the military at all. And so I just wrote it as this is me. This is what I've dealt with my whole life. This is the steps I took. Service is very important to me. I really want to keep serving. That's kind of the nuts and bolts of it. I didn't criticize the president. I didn't criticize any policies. I just said I want to keep serving my country and I will as long as they'll have me. Within 24 hours, kind of so coincidentally, within 24 hours, the crash happened. So that was just
wow.
I wrote it, submitted it via email to his editor, and then they published it that night. The next day, I appeared on his program and spoke on SiriusXM to him about the essay. And then that evening, the crash happened. So it's not like we knew. It's not like we released it in tandem or anything.
Just dumb luck. Huh?
It was just dumb luck. And so within 24 hours of the crash, I was finding out that I was being named as the pilot, as like the unnamed female pilot that was the supposed DEI hire that President Trump had alluded to at a press conference, that we know it's DEI because we just know. And so that kind of sent the online world into a frenzy of like, let's figure out who this pilot is. And from what we can tell, Matt picked up on that and used a picture of me and the Smerconish article and kind of put it all together. And with his following, he had, I think, 2.5 million followers or something like that. We believe he did the most damage. Like it would not have had the legs it had if he hadn't posted about it. I wasn't alerted until I received a text message from a military person. And she was like, one of my good friends. She was, hey, do you see this being posted about you? Like, I just saw this in my feed. And like, I wasn't tagged in it. Like the algorithm works. Like all of the military people, I think, got the rumor first because it was a military related thing. Plus aviation community is small. And so any aviation related stuff, the algorithm really worked. This was like maybe 6 a.m. on Friday. And I was like, oh, I said, that's just probably because I wrote an essay and it was some bot that must have confused me being a Blackhawk pilot with Black Hawk news of the crash. I was like, this is goofy. And then I got another text message, and then another from all people in my unit, all getting it not from each other, but fed to them through the algorithm of Facebook or Twitter or TikTok. Even a lot of them saw it on there. And I didn't have a Twitter, a TikTok, or anything. I had a Facebook that was locked down, and I had alias accounts that didn't tie my name or likeness to me at all. And I was like, okay, that's strange. And I start Googling myself, which is a surreal thing to do when you're a private person. And I just see all of this talk and screenshots, my face, and then the Blackhawk crash, and then like overlays of video and just all of the stuff. And I was like, oh my goodness. And around that same time, I'm like still kind of getting dressed and trying to wake up and figure out what to do about it. I get a call from the Daily Mail to my personal cell phone. And I've never spoken to the Daily Mail. I don't know if they found it on like an old resume from some old resumes. I don't know how they got my phone number. They're like, hey, I'm surprised you answered this morning. Do you know what's being said about you? And I was like, yeah. I was like, and I just kind of did some more searching. And that's when it really started hitting me. And I started like shaking in my voice. I was like, oh.
Right, when the British tabloids start calling.
A British guy's on the other line. A reporter with the Daily Mail with a British accent asking if I knew what they were being said about me. And I'm like, first of all, how do you even know who I am? Like, I'm just like, this is so wild. And I was like, kinda like, and he's like, well, I just want to get your take on it. And I'm just like, I kind of want to check with my unit before I say anything. I'm alive. And that's, I think, around the same time I posted the video on my Facebook, and I made it a public video so everyone could see it. Because my page, I looked at my message requests because I don't really see them. They're filtered. And I looked and it was like hundreds of like hate and reporters wanting to know and people asking and just crazy. I was like, oh crap, this is insane. So I posted a video just saying I'm alive, and what's being said about me is not accurate, and it's insulting to the families and the victims of the crash to try to tie me up in some sort of political thing. And I was like, okay, well, like I'm done. I'm good now, right? Like it'll be over. And it just went all day. Just the most heinous things coming into my DMs, mixed with a lot of people who really cared, reaching out and calling me directly. People I haven't spoken to that I served with in 2011. That was the last time I saw them. And they called me and said, hey, we haven't spoken in 12 years or whatever since we were in Iraq, but I think this is you, right? Like I didn't know they didn't know I transitioned. They didn't but they figured out that it was me, and I was just like, yep, that's me. They're like, are you okay? Like, so it was really neat to see that kind of aspect of humanity, people reaching out that that so many people care. Yeah, my life was put into turmoil that weekend because I had all of my old Ford Transition accounts being doxxed, like.
How long did this entire sort of news cycle, this entire episode run? So from, as I've heard British soldiers use this phrase, flash to bang time, how long did all of this last for you?
So I didn't find out until the morning of Friday, but Thursday night is technically when it started.
Okay.
It just hadn't come across my feed or anyone who knew me yet. But it was sometime Thursday afternoon, evening that it started. And then by Friday morning, it had reached kind of like a fever pitch where people in my neighborhood were seeing it, and then that's when I responded. And as soon as I posted the video, that really quelled a lot of it. And then what came after that was not people wondering if I'm alive or people just saying I'm a terrible person because I killed myself and did this. Then it became well, we don't like you because you're alive.
Right. Wow.
So all day Saturday and Sunday was, it's a shame you weren't on that helicopter. It's a shame you aren't dead. Yeah, I can't wait to spit on your grave. Like these are quotes. These are messages I received from people. And a lot of love. I don't want to overshadow how much love came my way, but like horrific cartoons of trans people killing themselves, like, just the kind of things that you're just like, if I wasn't military SEER trained, combat veteran, this would be really difficult. Like, imagine if I was mentally unstable a little bit and then I was thrust into that, like this could ruin somebody. It was terrifying. And, of course I snapped into soldier mode, like SEER training kicked in right away.
Of course.
I was like, okay, let me load my weapons and pack my bags and figure out what to do, what my next steps are. My civilian employer reached out and said, "Hey, we see what's happening right now to you. We're going to hire you armed security for your house," which I was like, thank goodness, because there's no way I could afford that.
Right.
And so they did that for me. And then my unit called and checked on me, of course, and asked if I needed any help. And I said, I think I'm okay now because I've got security and I'm pro Second Amendment. I've got a concealed carry permit. I said, and then we're just going to go away for the weekend. So I sent, my wife and kiddo to different places. I went to a different place. We all went 3 different directions and just waited out the weekend. And in that process, I also appeared on CNN to kind of dispute the rumor and everything Saturday morning. And I remember my wife calling me right before going on CNN, just terrified. She's like, I don't think you should go on. Like, I think this is going to make it worse somehow. Like, I'm just so scared. And she's just crying. And it was such a tough time to figure out what is the right answer. How do we, put the fire out versus, adding fuel to it? I just relied on my Army training and my Army values. And, it's so crazy because I thought, well, maybe I'll get a little bit of whatever from the essay, and maybe it could jeopardize my military service if they don't like that I said anything. I never thought I'd get swept up into this, but it's so typical for trans people to be targeted like this online. Like anytime a shooting happens or anything happens or Teslas are being lit on fire, it's, oh, look at the type of person. I wonder what their pronouns are, like type snide comments about it.
Right.
From big accounts like Alex Jones type accounts, big level accounts. And I mean, I was a juicy target, like trans Black Hawk pilot converting to Judaism, which that was mentioned in some of the posts, like, oh, and a Jew, like, yeah.
Are you converting?
I am converting.
Shalom.
Yeah,
That's my team. So
okay, yeah.
Welcome aboard. You can take on all the baggage of being Jewish now as well.
That's right. That's right. I figure one transition's not enough. Why not change religions too?
Yeah.
I joke, as you know, I do stand-up comedy now too, and one of my jokes is my hobby is collecting identities that people hate.
Can you explain, Joe, a bit about your decision to file a lawsuit against Matt Wallace without giving away too much of the particulars? Because I know it's active, but why file a lawsuit and keep it active after that sort of 48, 72 hours news cycle runs its course?
Yeah, few things. There has to be accountability. That's the number one thing, right? That has to be accountability for these accounts that target innocent people for no reason, say terrible things about them, basically send mobs to them, whether it's digitally or physically, and then they profit off of those posts, and then they delete them and move on without even any kind of recourse for the person. On top of that, the trans community in general is, like I was saying earlier, something happens that's a tragedy, and it's, oh, I bet they were trans or whatever. Like this whole unstable trans person is this weird thing that's going around now around tragedies. And most of those people don't get a chance to fight back. And so because it was such a high profile thing, it allowed me to find a network of pro bono lawyers through the Equality Legal Action Fund. And it found a way that gave me an avenue to hold someone accountable for this. And so that's why, like, it's one thing to be a private person and then be forced into the public sphere, fearing for your life. It's another thing to, well, now that that's happened, what do I do with it? Do I go back into hiding and just, melt as a snowflake in the corner, or do I fight back? And I'm a soldier, I'm a warrior. Like, that's what I do. And so, it's justice. It's justice for so many people that this happens to every day. Teachers that are trans that get accused of being predators and pedophiles when they're just trying to do their job. They're not doing anything wrong. So yeah, I want to hold people accountable.
So can you connect those dots and sort of explain how disinformation, misinformation like this becomes a real world threat? Yeah. Right? Because I think so many people, especially people that are terminally online, just sort of live with this day to day. But if you're not a terminally online person, like you said, you're somewhat of a private person, I don't think they realize, when, the sort of echo chamber and the noise reaches a certain level, how the ability for that to jump into the real world becomes more and more apparent. So, and, you've brought up your SEER training more than once. Can you just sort of connect those dots, about how you perceive that threat and the actions that you felt you needed to take because of it?
Because there are so many people chronically online and not mentally healthy. We see this, right? We see something go viral and then something in real life occurs because of it, whether it's a person who's unstable ends up at someone's door, right? Because I'm a trans woman, I'm also an object of a whole class of people that fetishize trans women. So I had a lot of that kind of like seedy stuff coming in of like, oh, like send me a picture. Like it was just anything and everything, right?
Yeah.
And so all I could think about was if the Daily Mail can find my phone number and call me, and if my neighbor saw me and came over next door and knocked on the door to ask if we were okay, and oh, by the way, my legal name, which is not what I go by, was being shared in these same places, then it's really not hard for someone through Virginia property records, because they're all pretty much available, to figure out where I live and to figure out where my family lives. And so I went prepared for the worst, hope for the best, right? So I went straight into that world of assume someone's going to come to the house. Assume it. Because if I don't, then I'm going to never forgive myself if my ex-wife or my stepdaughter are harmed because of me. I don't really care about myself in that sense, like, because I'm a fighter, I carry a weapon. Like, I'm ready to go out if that's what it takes. But I'm not ready. Yeah, I'm not ready for someone to be hurt on my account just because that they love me, right? Like that would be hard to live with.
How do we humanize the trans experience right now? Especially at a time like this, right? The assaults do seem nonstop. And I think you've had such a high profile example of what that looks like. And, that's sort of deeply unfortunate. But as you just said, whether or not you're a teacher, an educator, elite Army pilot, it just seems all encompassing, from policy to the culture war. Like, what can we do to really sort of humanize, the trans experience and bring it back, to a level of sort of acceptable discourse? Because it seems like we made a lot of really good progress, right? And then it just feels like all of that progress is now being dismantled just all day, every day. So what can we do?
Well, there's a lot of things. And there's a lot of responsibility falls on a lot of groups of people. It's not just one thing. What I'm doing to try to fix it is advocate for a more pragmatic, moderate, middle of the road approach. The pendulum swinging from one side of the extreme to the other that's what's causing the most harm in both directions. And unfortunately, you need some moderates, right, to sacrifice themselves to slow the momentum down from that pendulum swinging from one side to the other. And those are mostly gone. The flakes of Congress, the McCains, all of them are gone. And so my best avenue, because I am not a politician, is to do it through podcasting and everyday conversations of speaking from some sort of baseline level of truth about the issue and being visible. I never wanted to be visible. I never wanted to be this person who's advocating for anything. I just wanted to live my life and do my thing. And like, I transitioned because I have a good life, and being trans is the least interesting thing about me. But I also, just like with the lawsuit, I've been given a rare opportunity that, while tragic and unfortunate, I could also make it something good. And so I'm also trying to do that by speaking to the other side in a way that's not shutting down speech, in a way that's not browbeating them or screaming pronouns, in a way that I think because I come from those circles, because my family's in those circles, and because the military tends to be more of that way and more of a meritocracy, then I think that's a strategy I think we could use. And so stand-up comedy is one way I'm doing that, is I'm telling my story in a comedic way, showing that, yeah, I can laugh about myself. Like, being trans is funny at times. And here's some funny examples. And so that's why I went down to Austin, Texas, and did comedy down there, and went to Joe Rogan's club and appeared on the #1 show called Kill Tony with Tony Hinchcliffe. And I had so many people message me saying, this is the kind of representation we need. We need to see everyday trans people just living their lives and being visible, because a lot of us we're employed. We have families. Like, we're not chronically online. We have things to do. There are doctors, there's lawyers, there's educators, right? And so we're not the ones that are out at the picket line advocating for, fringe trans policies. And so I think kind of the more historically what they would call transsexuals back of the early 2000s, I think they need to come out of the woodwork a little bit more and speak up a little bit more, and, send the clown car away, and the adults need to come back into the room and speak a little bit. And so that's what I'm hoping I can advocate for.
Do you feel you're reaching the other side, Joe, through your podcasting or, your stand-up? Do you feel like you're punching through?
Oh, yeah.
That's fantastic.
Especially after the Kill Tony event, I've had so many people message me that say, I'm thinking about this differently. I can't believe the military's screwing you. Like, regardless of what you chose, why are you not getting your retirement? Like, even people that maybe don't want me serving are like, they're still treating you wrong, right? Like, even they can see that, and they weren't hearing those stories, because during that whole crash rumor and the lawsuit and everything, as those were breaking, not one Fox News, not one anybody from the right reached out and wanted to interview me. And I even reached out and said, hey, I would gladly come on. I tried to get in touch with Rogan, Tucker Carlson, Charlie Kirk. I tried that whole sphere, because I was like, I can not melt in front of you and have a conversation about this stuff. And I don't need to convince you. I just need you to hear what you're not hearing. And so Kill Tony was the best avenue for that, because it's a bucket system. Anyone can sign up. And right. So I was able to, and by chance I got pulled the first time I signed up, and I used that whole format through entertainment and jokes and being a little bit, like raunchy, but also I told the story of trans military and how we're not getting our benefits and how we're getting screwed. And it really cut through. Slate did a whole article about it, using me as the example of, like, here's someone who went down there and played in this world.
Has your relationship with America or with the uniform changed or evolved, at all after sort of suffering both of these experiences in such a short period of time? And I think that's just as much a pragmatic question, as it is almost like a philosophical question,
Yeah, I think it shook my faith in institutions and American institutions. So I really didn't expect the military to do what they did and the way that they're doing it. So, like, there was all these levels of, well, if they do, they would give us our retirement. If they do, then it's like, and they've not met the standard along the way at all. And so it really shook my faith in it. And then it also made me realize just how, we can go back to Gladiator, like the dream that is Rome is a whisper, right? If you say it any louder than that, and it could vanish, right? And that's just, I keep falling back on that, of the idea of this experiment of the United States is so young, and it's such an experiment, which means these institutions that I've known my whole life have really only existed for a blink of an eye, and they could easily be changed and dismantled and destroyed tomorrow, depending on who shows up and what their intentions are. And I think I never understood how it takes courageous people through all levels of those institutions to keep them.
Check out more from RVA Magazine at rvamag.com. Be sure to sign up for our newsletter and check us out on Instagram and Reddit. And this is Landon Shroder for RVA Magazine. Talk soon.
Hear those sirens outside, I think it's going down. I hear those sirens outside, I think it's going down.